Hello, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, science enthusiasts of all ages, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce a man who has made science as exciting as a roller coaster ride and as essential as gravity itself. He's the reason so many of us grew up shouting, "Science rules!" and wondering just how things work, from the tiniest atoms to the vastness of the cosmos. He's an engineer, an educator, a best-selling author, a champion of reason, and of course, the one and only science guy. So whether he's explaining science, climate change, the wonders of evolution, or why bow ties are undeniably cool, he has dedicated his career to making science accessible, thrilling, and downright fun. So put your hands together, even if we can't hear you, and get ready to be dazzled by the one, the only, Bill Nye, the science guy. How are you?
Dazzling, Bertha, dazzling.
That was good?
Sure, yeah.
And you wore a bow tie, so I was so happy when you popped on screen and I saw you had a bow tie on.
Yeah, well, I also, it's my thing when I wear a bow tie, I also wear a shirt. That's just
Well, that's good for all of us.
the deal. Yeah, I don't want to scare people.
I want to start, Bill, with this issue of the Skeptical Inquirer. We are both featured on the cover, by the way.
A man can dream. A man can dream.
Oh, look at that.
Everybody available, a few places.
Wonder Twin Powers.
I already get it. So put my heart and soul into this thing.
So tell me about this. I know Stephen Hupp is the editor of Skeptical Inquirer, and did he approach you about this issue? How did that work?
No, I demanded to be no, of course he approached me. What do you mean? Yeah, he approached me to be the editor. And as I've said, I thought it would be, I won't say a walk in the park, but somewhat less consequential or serious, in that my traditional interactions with the Skeptical Inquirer are Joe Nickel, another crazy medical claim, some astrology, some mentalists. The amazing Kreskin died since the magazine came out, stuff like that. But we talked for just a few minutes in Las Vegas, Nev, and agreed that it would be better if it were a more serious issue about the most serious issues, or the issues that I feel are the most serious.
And I agree with you on that.
Well, the two issues for me that are absolutely the most serious are climate change, and bigger than that, if there is such a thing, is skeptical thought, or reason, or the ability to evaluate evidence. And so here we are.
Yes, and they go hand in hand when it comes to climate change. Now, the first question I wanted to ask you is from Stephen Hupp. He said that you recently received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and it was just 4 days after the official release of this issue. He wants to know, how big a role did that issue play in you being
I think it was instrumental. I mean, everybody at the White House pores over the Skeptical Inquirer. They've all, guys know, they called me the week before. So I'm wearing the ribbon. You're allowed to wear the ribbon. And I saw my new best friend, Pete Buttigieg. I'm kidding. I met Pete Buttigieg. And I said, is it okay to wear the ribbon?
What ribbon?
And he said, yeah, that's why we gave it to you. We wanted to wear it. So
this is your presidential.
Yeah. And
they give you like a small one?
They give you this one. They give you this one for the lapel, then this one for your pocket.
Nice.
This one is you wear with a tuxedo.
Nice.
So, but I'm not wearing, much as I respect you all, I'm not wearing a tuxedo tonight.
Well, I think, I taught science, middle school science, mainly 6th grade, for 35 years.
And look, she's fine. She's fine.
Oh, well,
a little shaken up, but she's okay.
You were, and I say this on behalf of, I asked a lot of teachers to write questions for me, on behalf of all the teachers that are listening right now. And I don't mean this in a deprecating way, the best substitute teacher.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mean, I'm honored. Yes.
Because, you know, we work from 9 to 4, 20-minute lunch, 3 different preps. And when I popped that tape in, and when I started, we're talking VCRs, and then we're talking DVDs, and then we're talking streaming, I could have 20 minutes where I know that kids are getting great content and you're also like crazy entertaining. So I thank you from the bottom of every teacher's heart.
I am honored, you all. My understanding is I have taught that hundreds of thousands of classes,
I
essentially.
think so.
And I
Absolutely.
am honored. We put our heart and soul into that thing.
Yes, and I have questions about the show, but I think we should focus on climate change. And this is my favorite question, and it's coming from a student, and he asks, considering the urgency of this issue, climate change, what emerging technologies or innovations are you most optimistic about, if you're optimistic at all?
You have to be optimistic, people, or you're not going to get anything done. Don't make me come over there. Nobody goes into the Super Bowl thinking he or she is going, no, what they are going to lose. You go into the game thinking you're going to win. If you think you're going to lose, you will win. We will overcome this, everybody. We will provide a high quality of life for everybody on earth. The question is when? How fast can we do it? Oh my goodness, my hair. How fast can we do it? So this is where people with critical thinking skills are going to change the world. I'm talking about you. So with this in mind, there's several technologies that I'm excited about. First of all, solar panels, wind turbines are getting more efficient, but the batteries, the storage technology is advancing so quickly that I believe in the next 20 years, we will have very workable, very heavy, very or relatively inexpensive batteries all over the place. And I'm talking about in buildings. Electric vehicles, those will continue to have longer range, and the charging stations will become more readily available, and so on. That progress is being made there. The other thing that I'm very excited about, you guys, as you may know, Bertha, everything happens for a reason. And that reason is usually physics. So physics is the study of motion and energy. So it is, ever since I started taking physics formally in high school, fusion, smashing
Ah,
subatomic particles together to create heat and light, was 40 years away. 40 years away. It's all.
always, yes.
Well, now it may be 15 years away or even 10 years away. There is a very confident company, Commonwealth Fusion, Commonwealth Energy, that claims they're going to have this going in next week, kind of thing. Well, suppose they're off 20 years. It would still be amazing. Then
Yeah.
there's another company in England, in Britain rather, and a company in Southern California. And there are universities around the world working on this problem. If we can get workable fusion energy, then that's it. We got electricity for everybody.
Yes.
We have electricity for everybody. We can change the world. So I'm very excited. And
Yes.
if I were king of the forest, we would be investing in fusion like crazy, Manhattan Project style stuff.
Yes.
So we're
I
working on that.
I had my students for 30 years write a research paper on alternative energy. And I always picked the smartest, the most research-minded students to do fusion.
Yeah, well, it may happen, you guys. It really may. It's an extraordinary time that we're living in.
Yes. So what about, we talked about technologies. One student brought in, she goes, I already created something that captures carbon, and she brought in a plant. I told her she was a smart aleck, but
No, what are you talking about? That's why we want to plant forests.
yes. Well,
That's
I
why
told
we want
her
promote
to
forests.
research.
A tree is a column of carbon.
Yes.
Come on.
I told her I wanted them to research carbon capture technology and companies that are investing in this, and she came back with a plant, which
Oh, okay.
It's pretty smart though.
Fine thing, but it takes land and water. And people are talking about what do you do locally? There's the heat island associated with cities. So,
Yes, urban heat island.
and then a tree is very efficient, or plants are very efficient, but you wonder if it couldn't be much more efficient. And somebody asked in the chat about geothermal energy. Yes, love geothermal energy.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's all hands on deck. You need
Yeah.
the solar,
So,
you need the wind, you need everything, the nuclear, the solar. I mean,
I say all the time about geothermal energy is we are really good at drilling. People want to drill to get to geothermal heat and to get to a stratum of rock or soil or earth crust that is at a relatively constant temperature, or almost exactly a constant temperature, and then use heat pump technology to push heat up and down. It would be fantastic. Yes, I'm all for geothermal. Let's go.
let's go. So what strategies do you found most effective to get people to listen to what you're saying? You got me.
Gotta chip away. The other thing, it just was on my mind, you guys. I was in a meeting earlier today, and someone said, "What about the intersectionality of energy policy and climate?" And I said, "You guys, when we people on our side of this throw around words like intersectionality, the other side, as I like to refer to it right now, is offended or tunes you out or doesn't respect anything else you might have to say." And so the words we choose are very important, because right now, progressive issues such as diversity, equity, inclusion, such as social fairness or redlining, systemic racism, stuff like that, and climate change are all wrapped together for the other side. The other side feels all those issues are all together. And when you throw around a word, a perfectly understandable, usable word like intersectionality, the other side is offended and tunes us out. So we have to have what I've always called, since we wrote the Science Guy show back in the 1900s, we got to have discipline in vocabulary, DIV, discipline in the vocabulary. That is essential. And so to get our points across, to raise awareness of climate change and get public engagement in energy policy and doing something about climate change. So that's something I emphasize strongly whenever I can. And when we did the Science Guy show, we had a saying: no bit to exceed 45 seconds.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that.
Now, of course, some bits far exceed 45 seconds, but even though it was shot single camera, and this is instead of 3 camera, we had edits that were very quick, rapid, and close up, wide, medium, tight, and all that stuff. And I tell everybody, let's say you're in the doctor's office, engaged in reading your issue of Skeptical Inquirer. Just notice how fast you turn a page. Like, let's say it's Tennis Digest or something. You might have an interest, but still, you'll turn the pages pretty quickly. And I claim this is human nature.
Yes.
So people, grown-ups, whine and complain about TikTok, but I assert that the speed that TikTok presents information is actually quite natural. And that's why people, these kids, get engaged in the screen for hours, is because this is, I claim, part of our nature. And if we were on the savannah or in the rainforest, you have to shift your gaze very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You may be subject to a threat. And so I claim that, I'm not saying there isn't a place for long form or what I like to call pay attentivity, but the Science Guy show had success because of the editing style.
I was wondering that because I would listen while I was frantically grading papers and you were teaching my class for me. And I thought, even back in the 90s, before we talked about attention spans and children with attention deficit disorder and stuff like
Socrates complained.
yes,
Nothing new here, people.
I didn't have so many accommodations in my classroom. I noticed your show was quick, fast, and phase out, phase back in. And I thought, these guys have some understanding of children's cognition.
Well, it's not just kids. That's my
It's
claim.
not just kids. That's true.
That's my claim.
I agree.
To evaluate.
If you were president or king of the universe,
king of the forest,
king of the forest, king of the universe,
forest.
What global policies would you implement if you could to combat climate change?
Well, you guys, what do we all want to do? We want to raise the standard of living of women and girls.
Yes.
Raise the standard of living of women and girls. Everybody is better off.
Boom.
We embrace the old saying, happy women and girls, happy life. Something like it goes something. Is that how it goes? It goes.
It's happy wife, happy life, as my husband.
Yeah, I know. People lighten up. Yes. And so along that line, I claim there's three things. Clean water, renewable, reliable electricity, and access to the internet for everybody on Earth. And if you have access to first of all, if you have electricity, then you can provide access to the internet to everybody in the world. And then you can have education. Yes, there'll be misinformation, disinformation, waste of time, silly goat videos, which are riveting, cats and toilet paper, all good. But there'll also be the opportunity for education for everybody in the world, especially girls and women. Then clean water enables everybody to be healthy and have agriculture to feed everybody in the world. And then you want the electricity, which enables all this to be renewable and reliable. So I marvel and drop my jaw with in incredulous fashion at my beloved United Nations, which has sustainable development goals.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask you on the United Nations website, they ask the visitor, do you know the 17 SDGs? 17? What? No, I don't know 17 of anything. Can you name 17 state capitals? No. It's just too many. So that's my claim. What about diversity, inclusion, equity? Okay. If we agree that we're going to raise the standard of living of women and girls, we have to make the world fair. That's what the whole thing is about, is fairness. And for some reason, the other side is just embraced this outlier phenomenon where certain athletes are participating in leagues of sports competitions that maybe are inappropriate. But wow, has that turned the last election. So all that aside, all that in mind, rather, I want the 17 Sustainable Development Goals to be embraced, but it's too many to remember or use or be useful. And I have told the guys at the United Nations this to their faces.
Oh, wow.
Saying, yeah, like we
and
do
their reaction?
School, like we do in middle school. I said it to their faces. Well, for some reason, they haven't abandoned them, even though I was there 2 weeks ago. I don't know why they haven't just set it all aside and started over.
Women, girls, clean water, electricity, internet probably encompasses a lot of the 17.
You see, that's what I'm saying to you.
Yeah. Anyway, that's when it comes to climate education here in the US, you got a question from Oregon, a teacher in Oregon named Sarah. Do you know, I found out recently, I wrote a book on climate education for teachers, and New Jersey is the only state with climate change standards.
I know the NCSE, National Center for Science Education, wrings its hands every week about this.
Yes.
And,
Well, there's a bill going through the House Education Committee in Oregon next week.
yeah,
So
Oregon will get around to it, but
I think so.
But Oregon, I used to live in Washington State. Oregon and Washington, people in the East or much of the country perceive those areas to be, and they are dominated by Seattle and Portland, the big cities. Those are west of the mountains, the Cascade Mountains, and then the Siskiyous. But east of the mountains is a very conservative area, and they vote,
Yeah.
and they people who live there are often very skeptical of progressive points of view, including climate science education.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was there. What are the biggest misunderstandings that need to be addressed in the classroom and in the society at large about climate change, do you think?
Well, my experience, people in the classroom have no problem understanding climate change.
Mm,
It's not rocket surgery. I mean, everybody can tell the world's getting warmer. Everybody can look at graph. Once you're able to understand a graph, what time is that, Bert? Third grade? When can you read a graph?
yeah, third grade.
10 years old, 9 years old? Then people can
See the
and
temperature normal.
anybody who reads music can appreciate that time goes along this horizontal axis, and then other stuff happens in the vertical axis. And so anybody is able to read graphs and see the world's getting warmer and warmer. My experience, rather, is that kids have no problem understanding that. It's
Yeah.
grown-ups who are closing their eyes to a situation they do not wish to acknowledge.
Yeah.
That's
Solution aversion might be part of it. I always promoted the idea of, guys, this is the economy of the 21st century. Just like the light bulb and the car pushed the US economy last century, this is what could keep us in the driver's seat. I always tell,
See what she did there? Driver's seat.
yeah,
Cars of the last century. See what she did?
I actually didn't see what I did there. But I said, it's like the candle maker stopping the light bulb or the horse breeder stopping the car. And look at what the car did for the US economy. There's money to be made here. That I use that argument when I know I'm not talking to somebody who really, really cares about the environment. I say, well, you could save money just in your own home on your
Well, this
electricity.
is the thing. So everybody, there's a lot of controversy, or there is some controversy about having distributed electrical generation, having solar panels on everybody's roof or on every Amazon distribution center roof. Saying, well, the electrical grid isn't set up for that. The electrical grid's not set up to have distributed electrical generation. Okay, let's set it up.
Yes.
Okay. So I think all the time, you guys, both of my parents were veterans of World War II. My dad was a prisoner of war, the Japanese Navy for 4 years. My mother was one of the code girls. She was in the Navy.
No way.
Total way. What did you do during the war, Mom? Can't talk about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so their relationship to the government, their relationship to civil service was that it's good and important and something you should do and accept and embrace. And so what we want to do is instill that same we are all in this together spirit, because during the spring of 1942, in the next 4 years, everybody was doing one thing. We are going to win this war. We are going to fight this global conflict. And they did. And so, as the saying goes, there has not been a Pearl Harbor moment and with climate change. And the problem is it's happening in slow motion.
Slowly.
Be that as it may, it is happening. And so we just keep reminding everybody that it's going on and that there's something we can do about it.
That kind of goes with John Mead's question. He's a teacher in Texas. Hey, John Mead, shout out. Um, he mentions the space race, 1957 to 69, and it made an immense change in the public trust and love for science. And what might possibly be a comparable idea or project that can capture the imagination and passion of our current K-12 students? So,
Well, you could say climate change, but if you want to talk about fusion or improved agricultural practices or fairness writ large, this is a great question. But I know what you mean. How the Apollo program and landing on the moon was a big deal.
yeah,
Well, that was the Cold War, everybody. People talk about, and reasonably talk about all the science that came out of going to the moon. In fact, moon rocks are still being studied. The moon rocks that came back in 1969, 70, 71, 72 are still being studied. That's good. But we keep in mind, everybody, it was the Cold War. NASA is a civil space agency created in response to the Soviet space program. And don't close your eyes to that situation. And so if we want to be competitive, we want to have a better electrical grid, renewable energy in a way that's better than anything that's going on in Russia or China.
China, yes.
And so China makes all these solar panels, this and that, but it is still largely a so-called extractive economy. It's still top down. It's still technocrats running it. It does not have free elections. And so you can claim that sooner or later it's going to catch up with the Chinese government. People are going to demand change. Tiananmen Square was maybe the start of that. It's been suppressed. That sentiment's been suppressed, but I won't be surprised if it bubbles back up again. And the strange thing that's going on now, we have a president and surrounded by sycophants, by suck-ups, who are, for whatever reason, embracing the former Soviet Union, the Russia.
Yeah.
It's astonishing.
Yeah.
And so why that is, I wonder about it all day, often long into the night, losing sleep over what's happening now with the US government. You know, when I was a kid, all of the grown-ups were either reading or talking about a book that was quite famous at that time, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, about how
Germany.
things went sideways in Germany. And one of the lessons from it, first of all, there's all this stuff in the beginning about the embrace of what nowadays you might call machismo, or male
Machismo.
dominating, yeah, macho. But then along with that is this incremental nature of it, where one lie led to a bigger lie, and a bigger lie. One sycophant, another sycophant, one suck up after another suck up, till it's surrounded by suck ups. And the German populace was on their hands or standing by as each increment got away from them.
Kind of like the frog in the warm water.
The frog in the warm water. So it is of great concern to me, because I'm of a certain age. And so this was going on when I was a kid. And then to this guy's question about the space race, I also came of age during this crazy optimism. Okay, war's behind us. Here we go. Let's use our resources and do something cool. We're going to the moon. We're building an interstate highway system. Everybody's going to learn geometry. This is going to be cool. So I came of age with all that. And people coming of age now came of age with the internet, which is every bit as exciting as all that, where you can get all this information all the time easily without having to just grind away for hours learning about what's going on in the world. So This is the most exciting time in human history. And, you know, it was, there was a government employee who brought this up. Obama, that's right, Barack Obama. He said, if you couldn't, I don't know if he was the first guy to say this, but I remember him saying it. If you couldn't pick when you would be born,
Yes.
I just blew it. If you couldn't pick where you would be born on Earth, you couldn't pick where, but you could pick when, somehow through some science fiction process. This would be the time you'd want to be born.
Yes.
It's better for more people, as much as screwed up as things may seem to be in many ways, as many concerns as we each may have. Things are better now for more people than ever in human
Than ever. I think it was something like you can't control what you're going to come back looking like either.
Could be, yes.
Then what you would pick, and you would most definitely pick 2025. That's for
as
sure.
messed up as it may be. Yeah.
I had a question here about Utah. Where'd it go?
Utah?
Yeah, about that it disappeared on me.
There's something about colonizing Mars.
Yes, actually quite a few questions about space. You are the CEO of the Planetary Society.
Let me start with, we don't colonize anymore. Colonies getting a bad rap.
That's true.
So the modern word is settle.
Settling. The settlers.
My answer to that is no, absolutely not. You guys, we are perfectly suited to live here on this planet. There is no other place that comes close to what we have on Earth. If you go to Mars, open the cabin door of your spaceship, you will suffocate in an instant. There is no air. There is hardly any water. You will die in a moment. Oh, it's going to be great. We'll build a big dome and we'll live in a dome. Okay, have you ever been to a middle school locker room?
Unfortunately, yes.
Months, it's not going to be pleasant. We'll just have unlimited energy. Oh, will we? Yeah. Anyway, if you want to do this, you guys, go to Antarctica and live there for a couple years. And the rules are you have to take your own air. You have to take whatever, scuba tanks or whatever it is. No, you're not allowed. Nope. Cannot filter the atmosphere. Nope. You got to take all your own air. You got to live in your dome. You'll see, you just can't practically do it. Nobody goes to Antarctica to live. Nobody goes there and builds a library or schools or Starbucks or whatever. They might build a Starbucks for the crew that's researching there. But we send people, or people go to do research, learn about the ice, learn about the atmosphere, discover the hole in the ozone.
Yes.
All marvelous things, but you don't go there to live. Mars is a crazy, hostile place. With that said, perhaps one day we will have people living there, perhaps doing research. But setting up a settlement, very difficult. Romantic, and to people who are from the US or European ancestry that spread around the world and did all this stuff, set up all these alphabets and things, that people like me may look at it like that's our natural course, but I don't think so, not on Mars.
I understand. I saw the machine in Port Lockroy in Antarctica that the British used to take photos of the ozone back in the 50s. And that's why we were able to compare to the photos taken in the 70s and say, uh-oh, something's going on. So that was a beautiful thing to see. So if we're not, what kind of future space exploration missions, or just missions in general, do you think have the coolest potential?
Oh, well, everybody, two things. Speaking of Mars, hey, is anybody watching not a member of the Planetary Society? Well, join us. Come on, be a member alongside. Be a member of the Planetary Society. Come on, planetary.org. World's largest independent space organization advancing space science and exploration.
And we dropped it in the chat, by the way.
Thank you. So, Mars formed about the same time as the Earth, but it's smaller. Got an ocean, cooled off faster, got an ocean, got an atmosphere, perhaps a billion years before Earth. So did life start on Mars, on an ocean of Mars?
And just not make it?
Well, uh, thrive for a while, and then because Mars is smaller, it doesn't have the iron nickel core rotating, which produces a magnetic field strong enough here on Earth to cause the particles of the solar wind to go down at the poles, at the north and south poles. Instead, perhaps, the solar wind, particles streaming off our star, the sun, stripped away Mars's atmosphere. And so the atmosphere that remains is quite thin. But if life started there, a hypothesis that is quite reasonable, not, I mean, it's extraordinary, but it's reasonable. Mars gets hit with impactors all the time, with meteors, meteorites. And so stuff gets tossed into space with these impacts. And then things fall in the orbital fashion, a Hohmann orbit, all the way to Earth. You can go online and buy Mars rocks. Is it possible that life started on Mars? Mars was hit, woo, 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 except in space, there's no sound. And you and I are descendants of Martians. Or maybe not. But if life started on Mars, it is very reasonable that we could go to these river valleys, these deltas of ancient rivers. Right now we're in Jezero Crater, and find so-called mud rocks, rocks that used to be wet. And perhaps in there you will find the equivalent of stromatolites or fossilized bacteria, Mars probes. And if we were to discover those, it will change the course of human history. Everybody will feel differently.
Yes.
Being alive.
That there's life on another planet. See, I want to leave retirement, go back to the classroom just to give that story.
Whew. Then the other place is,
that's how you turn kids on.
Well, kids of all ages. The other place is Europa, the moon of Jupiter with twice as much ocean water as Earth.
Didn't we just send the probe?
Yeah, we just sent it in October. We just sent it.
Me and you.
And yeah, well, if you're a taxpayer, or if you live anywhere in the developed world, you contributed. NASA spreads the work out worldwide. Maybe it was this morning or yesterday, this mission, the spacecraft called Europa Clipper, went past Mars and got slowed down just enough so it'll fall back to the Earth and get another
like a slingshot
sling out to Jupiter. So understand, it went on a very big rocket, October 6th, is that right? Recently, October, big rocket, 16th maybe, big rocket. It will get to Europa in 2030. That's going as fast as we could go.
That's not that far away.
Oh, no. But keep in mind, everybody, Jupiter is a long way out there. You know, on Star Trek and now Discovery, there's a fungus in the universe that allows you to go anywhere instantaneously. That's not like that. Getting to Jupiter takes a long time. But if we find evidence of, say, amino acids, or better yet, ribonucleic acid, RNA.
Yeah, ribozyme.
And maybe there are Europanian microbes being tossed into space by the squeezing of the gravity of Jupiter as it orbits. This would be extraordinary, you guys. And we are doing it for a tiny, tiny fraction of the federal budget. Tiny.
Yes, NASA's so tiny. It would change the way all humanity would see life.
Oh, everybody would be different. And by the way, the proposal today is to cut NASA's budget by half. Cut NASA's budget by a quarter, cut planetary science budget by half.
Well, one of the questions I got is, there's increasing private sector involvement in space. How do you see the role of, if that's the case, public space agencies evolving versus the private sector?
Two different things. So keep in mind, if you are Blue Origin or SpaceX or Rocket Lab in New Zealand, your biggest customers are space agencies. NASA, European Space Agency, Japanese Aerospace Exploration. Those are your big customers. That and the Space Force are your big customers. What we want is for NASA not to be building rockets, but building cool spacecraft. There is no business case for looking for life on Mars. I don't know, I was going to
Yeah.
sell tickets or something, which is not right now, not practical. We want NASA to be doing these cool, extraordinary missions, NASA to be doing earth science, to learning about climate and methane emissions and carbon dioxide and so on, to be learning about climate change on Earth and on Venus. That's what we want NASA to be doing. And for that, you buy rockets from commercial rocket companies. That's what we want. In the 1960s, the Cold War, the start of things, NASA also had to build its own rockets, but NASA doesn't need to be doing that anymore. No space agency needs to be doing that anymore. So,
Well, hopefully they'll lobby to keep NASA at its current budget, perhaps.
well, if you want to lobby, I'm serious, you guys, just shameless plug. The Planetary Society has a website. You can go to it today and find it very quickly, where you can send an email or a paper letter to your member of Congress or senator. And we have a lot of people in other parts of the world, in Canada, Europe, who send similar messages to all of Congress. So check us out at planetary.org.
Yes,
And you can do something. And so while we're all frustrated about what's going on now, especially with the US government, when you do even a small thing, you feel better. Not only may you be changing the course of human history, which would be good, but you also sleep better.
That's what, when people ask me, how do you teach something like climate change without depressing the hell out of the kids? I say you have to give them some agency. You have to give them a feeling of doing something.
So while they're doing something, I encourage everybody to learn algebra so that when you come of age, you can solve these extraordinary problems.
Yeah. So you just led me to another question before. I've been looking at this question for a while, though, by Harold. He's in the audience tonight. How do you feel? Are you optimistic about the use of AI for helping solve any of these problems? I'm sure you've been asked that before.
I'm very optimistic about artificial intelligence. Yeah, very optimistic. And everybody, it's not going anywhere. You're not getting away from it. Now, how we use it and how we might regulate it. You know, I'm in two unions. I'm in Screen Actors and I'm in Screenwriters and Writers Guild. And we want to be the creators. We want to be the people that tell the stories. And to be sure, it's very reasonable that this is an example. It's very reasonable that artificial intelligence will supplant a lot of that work. You can whine and complain and wring your hands, but that is the future, peoples. So what we want is for everybody to have, what is the one thing? The one thing we want everybody in the world to have. What's the one thing? One thing, Bertha. Critical thinking skill.
Oh, God, yes.
So when you are presented with a video or audio or writing or words, you will have the ability to evaluate evidence, or let's say the habit of mind to evaluate whether or not it's bona fide. And so this is our goal in the skeptical movement, informal skepticism, is to get the whole world to think critically.
Yes, when you're talking about the internet being such a wonderful thing and such an exciting time in human history, I feel that way. I do, but it's also so much easier to get misinformation out there.
Oh man, this is the problem.
You know, like, remember what did Mark?
We should have organizations that promote critical thinking.
Oh, gee, we should have an entire education program called Generation Skeptics.
Yeah.
Plug. How do we inspire young people to pursue careers in science, especially with this era of misinformation that we're in?
Well, everybody starts out a scientist.
Yes.
Everybody who's 6 years old loves science. And I say all the time, we don't want everybody to become a scientist. We just want everybody to be scientifically literate,
Yeah.
to have the ability to evaluate, or the habit of mind to evaluate evidence. And so that's where you come in, middle school teacher. Let's go. One
Yeah.
of the most popular Science Guy episodes, by the way, is the pseudoscience one.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I won't. You're never supposed to say your favorite, but it's good. We have ships going over the horizon. We have the moon casting a shadow on Earth. I mean, the Earth casting a shadow on the moon. I'm being hilarious. All right, and because that's an extraordinary claim. The Earth is round is extraordinary, but you can prove it to yourself. For example, and then we had one of the bits I really liked was psychic pizza. It shows up before you order it because it's
Because it
psychic.
knows. Yeah. I think the biggest thing as a teacher we should be teaching is humility, intellectual humility, because
Well,
scientists try to prove themselves wrong. People think we're trying to prove ourselves right, but they're trying to design experiments to prove themselves wrong. And most people just take one dose of evening primrose oil, and if it alleviates their menopausal symptoms, they're like, oh, this works. I'm like, well, that's not how science does it, you know.
so can I show you all something? So this used to be a parlor trick for me. Uh, and you guys, does everybody know who Ed Begley Jr. is?
Enlighten us.
He's an actor. Did everybody know the expression "turn it up to 11"? It's from a movie called Spinal Tap.
Oh, okay, the rock stars.
Yes, yes. So Ed Begley used to live 3 doors from me. Now he lives about a half-mile away. They moved to it. He's very well known for his environmental activism and being groovy and recycling everything and all this stuff. They tore a house down and rebuilt it all super green, low volatile organic paint, and on a solar heated lap pool, 9 kilowatts of solar panels on all this cool stuff. But before that, he lived 3 doors from me, and he crossed paths with Bobby Kennedy Jr. They were both involved in environmental activism. This is in 2018. Ed Begley sent me this message. Hi, Bill, call Bobby Kennedy. I sent Bobby Kennedy my address at the Planetary Society, and I see we have an auto iris issue here. Yeah, and so Bobby Kennedy sent this.
Whoa. Whoa, that's a lot.
Oh, it went on and on.
Yeah.
It went on and on and on, on and on and on and on and on. No more. Thank you. I read your book. On and on and on. You confuse causation with correlation. On and on. And then I had to cut him off. Everybody. I went to elementary school with a guy who had polio. You do not want polio.
No.
Bobby Kennedy is wrong.
And
Wrong about
dangerous.
vaccines. And this is a classic critical thinking thing. Vaccine technology goes back 2 centuries.
Mm-hmm.
And now the new guy who's going to be the head of NIH says, well, let's do another study of autism. No.
Oh my, there's been
It
thousands.
introduces doubt. No. And the fundamental idea, you guys, vaccines to protect you, that's good. To protect you, that's great. But the main thing about vaccines is to protect me from you. Because the more people that get infected with measles, the more it's going to mutate, and the more dangerous it's going to be. This is public health. This is fundamental.
We have a day called National Science Appreciation Day. It's March 26th. And we chose that day because in 1953, March 26th, that's the day Jonas Salk announced his successful polio vaccine trials. And we're asking people to send their stories on Science Saves is the name of the website. And we're getting a lot of stories from older Americans who remember their little classmate not coming back to school.
Yeah. and we couldn't, I grew up in Washington, D.C., the city of Washington, where it is 30 Celsius, 99 Fahrenheit, 99% humidity, and you couldn't go swimming because it's a waterborne virus.
Yeah, I was in the swimming pools in the summer.
Yeah,
I just got an appointment for an MMR vaccine because I was born in a time period where they used an attenuated virus.
yeah, yeah.
And I went to the doctor this morning and she said, you know, you probably should get an MMR vaccine.
Go do it.
I have it. My appointment's next Friday.
Good. So, wear a mask.
Not for me, but for everyone else.
Yeah.
Like you said, we're all in this together. And that's how I feel too. When someone says, oh, I'm not going to get sick of COVID, I was like, but it's not about you. It's about the people at the grocery store. By the way, I need to shout out. There is a group of people, they're not wearing masks, but hopefully they're all vaccinated. At the Western New York branch of the Center for Inquiry, Bill, they're all gathered in the conference center there watching this together.
I believe as a fundraiser, there's a bookshelf that I paid for as a young man.
At the Buffalo, New York?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody there, scavenger hunt. Go find that bookshelf when we're done here.
But anyway, that aside, that was not what you were going to ask me. No, yes.
Well, we've got all these questions suddenly coming in. Can episodes of Bill Nye the Science Guy be streamed for free?
Well, only in bootleg fashion right now. So what I'm trying to do or working to is to get the public broadcasting versions of the show available again. So everybody, there were two versions of every episode. The syndicated version, which you would watch on Saturdays and Sundays on commercial television, 22 minutes, 30 seconds. Then during the week, 5 days a week on public broadcasting was the PBS version, which 28 minutes, 26 seconds. It's 5 minutes longer. And I want to get those episodes available again. The drawback or the feature is the music, is clearing the music rights for the longer version.
Oh, yeah. There are a lot of
well, in public broadcasting, you could just play it, it's in the public interest and stuff. But not to worry, the current administration is suppressing or wants to suppress public broadcasting and national public radio and all that. But we gotta fight that. We gotta fight that. Everybody in the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, Congress is to promote the progress of science and useful arts. It's in the Constitution.
That's handy that you have that right there. Is that did you always that's planned or you happen to always have it there?
Both. Yes, it's planned, and I always happen to have it there. Yes. You can see this thing is it's seen some action.
It's a bit dog-eared.
Yeah,
that's
but it
good.
Still works, and so it's available. As I say, the Constitution's available in paperback now. That's a joke, and so it is a remarkable thing that we have this idea of the rule of law. But tomorrow is Stand Up for Science. So if you're around, I looked at the website a few minutes ago. Over 50 cities are having a Stand Up for Science event. I'll be on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial tomorrow in Washington, D.C. as part of the program, emphasizing the importance of science to our lawmakers who right now are, for some reason, suppressing science.
Yes.
That's not in our best interest, both from a legal standpoint or from a constitutional standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint. You do not want to fall behind other economies.
I think that's a message that needs to get across, because that's a message that people hear, that we don't want to fall. It's like kind of the space race message,
That's absolutely a space race message. Yeah.
We have a question from Georgia, from a ties teacher named Patty Howell. Hey, Patty. And we are talking about cuts to NASA. We were talking about cuts to public broadcasting. What about the how will changing or getting rid of the Department of Education affect climate change education?
Well, it's bad. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. And
We'll call the show on that question.
no, but everybody, the reason we have a Department of Education, among other things, is to promote the idea that we're all in this together, that we have uniform standards, and we assess national performance in education. So this idea that schools are a personal choice, that people want taxpayers to support parochial schools, and then enable people to go to parochial schools or private schools with public
Money.
tax dollars. You don't want that, because in general, people who have religious schools have them because they want to suppress the teaching of evolution.
Yes.
And that is not in anybody's best interest. And the example that we've alluded to a few times is diseases and public health. The most dangerous thing, if you're a human, is not a lion or tiger or bear. Oh my. It's germs and parasites. That's what's going to kill you. And so germs and parasites are out there killing us, making us sick because of this evolutionary competition between our immune system and their rapid reproduction and mutation. So that's, in general, is this idea of having public tax dollars support religious-based or private schools that want to suppress evolution is inappropriate. And that is an example of a reason you have a Department of Education. This idea that all parents know better what to teach than schools or professional educators is appealing to some, but I'll bet just about anybody that many, many parents are unqualified when it comes to teaching
Absolutely.
algebra 3 or alleles in biology or history of African kingdoms. I'll bet you just about everybody out there is completely unqualified to teach calculus or what have you. There's a few. Oh, there's a few. But all the overwhelming majority of parents are unqualified to teach that stuff. And
well, we circle back to my intellectual humility comment, you know, that we should be aware of our own limitations. I wrote curriculum for elementary school science. Now, I taught middle school science for 35 years. I wrote curriculum for elementary school science, showed it to some elementary school teachers. They made a bunch of changes. I made a bunch of assumptions about what these kids could learn that they are not at the age to learn. And I know what I'm doing. You know, I teach science. So I can't imagine a parent not in education teaching stuff like calculus or algebra or history of Russian literature or whatever.
What have you. Yeah. So all this aside, Bertha.
Yes.
We've been at this an hour.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more quick question because I want to end on a positive note.
Yes.
And then we'll close this off. First of all, thank you for joining us. I think we had a very good time. But I want to ask you, this is coming from a 6th grade student named Daniel. If you could time travel to witness one scientific event in history, what would it be? That's a tough one, right? Because there's a lot of stuff you'd want to see.
Well, there's two things, if I can do two things. The first one, I would like to see Michael Faraday demonstrate magnetic fields in the Christmas lecture in London, 1831. That would be, might have been 1830. That would have been fantastic. And I would like to be there to see if it's really a true story. Apparently it is. We had a very competent researcher on the Science Guy show who assured us all that it's a true story. I was raised with the belief that this person who came up to Michael Faraday was the Queen of England, but no, it was somebody, a woman who attended his Christmas lecture with her family, came up. Michael Faraday moves a bar magnet and a coil of wire at one end of the lab bench, and a magnet, a compass, a magnetic compass at the other end moves or wiggles. And the woman is supposed to have said to him, "But Mr. Faraday, of what use is it?" And he is supposed to have said, "Madam, madam, of what use is a newborn babe?" Now, I don't know how much time you spent with human babies, but they're not useful.
No, far from it.
They don't do the dishes. They don't clear the table. They're loud. They leak. There's all sorts of issues. But that kid is going to grow up to become Michael Faraday or Daniel or Albert Einstein or somebody. The other thing I'd really like to have been around for to see was when Niels Bohr, the guy who came up with the Bohr model,
The
atom, when Niels Bohr realized that 0.7% of the uranium has fewer neutrons than the other 99.3%. That would have been cool.
The radioactivity.
Well, apparently, he just got up from the lunch table and walked through the snow to make a diagram on the blackboard. If that seems to be a true story. Anyway, Daniel, that's a great question. But Daniel, with those two things, those two examples from science history in mind, the best is yet ahead, man. Keep in mind that nobody knows where gravity comes from. I mean, think about that. We send spacecraft using the gravity of Mars to slow them down so they can sling around the Earth and go out to the moon of Jupiter, Europa. We understand it with extraordinary precision. We have to take relativity into account when we do that. We have mobile phones that tell us which side of the street we're standing on because we understand both special relativity, the speed of the spacecraft affecting the clocks, and general relativity, gravity affecting the clocks. We understand all that. Everybody's running around right now in cosmology and astronomy talking about dark matter, observing the motion of galaxies. And there's some source of gravity out there that we cannot see, we cannot detect. It is very reasonable to me that since all four of my grandparents were born in the 19th century, all four of my grandparents were born in the 1800s, they didn't know there was relativity, let alone what it would lead to. This conversation we're having right now, for example, using field effect transistors and whatever else you might have. Just think what the discovery of dark matter may do for mankind. Just think what our understanding of the cosmos will change when we discover, in this one example, what dark matter is. Very recently, I met the guy, one of the three guys who got a Nobel Prize, Demis Habibis, got a Nobel Prize for realizing or coming up with a way to find out how proteins are folded, these extraordinarily complex molecules, and it's their physical shape, along with the chemical properties of the atoms, that determines their chemical reactivity, how they interact with the world, with us, with everything. These discoveries are extraordinary. And Daniel, you're living through them right now.
They're ahead of us.
Great question, but the best is yet ahead, Daniel, and you're going to be part of it.
Beautiful. I think that is the perfect ending to this conversation.
Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you. Get your copy of Skeptical Inquirer from last month. Get this month's. Turn it up loud. Check out the Planetary Society and vote. Everybody. Vote with science and climate in mind. And then together we can, dare I say it, Bertha, change the world.
Yes. Good night, everybody.
Good night, you guys. Carry on.